Yeah, but please, can't we just get like the evil villain Patrick Reed like holing out on 17 from the middle of the fairway and he has no idea it went in? Can't we? No, that's not plausible. He can't. Oh, he did. Well, what about? I mean, what, of the number of things that struck me, one, my wife was enthralled. All sorts of bamboo fibers and what.
Let them pandas eat.
What is up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. Postmasters edition. We'll talk about that. Tony, you look very cozy though today.
I'm as cozy as I've ever been on Earth.
You're as cozy as you've ever been on Earth. Yes, Cozy Earth. Thank you. They are sponsoring this particular podcast. So shout out to the Cozy Earth people in the world. You're wearing a. Is that bamboo, Tony?
I've never. Can't say I've ever been a big bamboo fiber guy, but yeah, this is a Cozy Earth bamboo lightweight hoodie.
You don't know how good bamboo is until you try it.
I don't know how this affects the panda population, but
it's and technically it's made from like this viscose or whatever, like fiber from bamboo. Hey man, if there's technology in your putters, there's technology in your bed sheets, your hoodies, your pullovers. I've tried the bed sheets for a while. I love them. It's like sleeping on bamboo. Is what it's like. It's not like
sleeping. That, oddly enough, even though
I know. We did score a discount though for people. Use no putts, NOPUTTS. That's it. No putts. You get 40% off, whatever you want. That's a pretty damn good deal.
My wife's a big fan of the blanket they sent. I'll never get to use it, but it looks soft.
You might sleep better with Cozy Earth. I think you probably will. You're certainly not going to sleep any worse, and they're not the least expensive things out there, so the fact that you can get them for 40% off, that ain't half bad. All right. The cost of a driver, Rory, new products, plenty to get into this particular week. Where should we start?
Probably the Masters, and then we'll get to...
Yeah, let's start with that. I said it last week, best week of the year. I love the Masters, everything about it. Haven't been, gonna go at some point. I will get there. Is it on your bucket list?
As much as any golf tournament is, yeah. I mean, like if I got an invite, I probably wouldn't say no. I'm not like entering the lottery every year and swearing when I don't get tickets, but
yeah. But like you're not gonna go out of your way to make it happen before you die?
Hey, it's not much I go out of my way to do.
That's true. I am. There are no bogeys in paradise. Not sure if you knew that. Just helps. But man, yeah, I'm going. It would. Give me your quick rundown. I mean, obviously it'll be remembered for Rory as well. It should. I
think when you look at Sunday and how this leaderboard eventually shook out, it's very rare that sport in general, but especially a golf tournament, gives you absolutely everything you could hope for.
Right.
And so yeah, like we talked about it last week. My heart was with Rory the whole way. I tuned in to watch. Just absolutely incredible. So you got the guy I think the majority of us wanted to see win. You had Justin Rose. I don't want to call him grizzled, but like this veteran guy, you almost forget that he still plays. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
You almost forget he still plays. Like he's basically, his hat sponsor might as well just say Banks or Money, between MasterCard and Morgan Stanley. And he's right there, and he's competitive, and he's making it interesting and maybe, dangerously close to being Stuart Sink to Tom Watson. But fortunately, I think that didn't happen. You have the villain who's poised to make a run in Patrick Reed and really came within a couple dicey putts of making it really interesting. Of course, I would say looking at that back nine, Rory came within a couple of dicey putts of kind of walking away with it. So Scotty Scheffler right there, Bryson DeChambeau obviously probably the biggest draw in the game right there, Ludwig Oberg who's kind of positioned as the next superstar.
Right.
Schauffele in the mix. Zach Johnson trying to win another one, in the mix. Jason
Yeah.
Day, which we talked about last week, and then remiss not to mention Max Homa, who was nowhere this entire season,
Yeah.
and then he finishes in the top 12, and basically gets to come back. So
If you were trying to write the script, this checked off more than you would have reasonably put into a script. It checked off every single
it's very
box.
much like we don't have time to work all of this into the plot, like maybe
Yeah,
for
we
the
can't.
sequel.
Yeah, but please, can't we just get like the evil villain Patrick Reed like holing out on 17 from the middle of the fairway and he has no idea it went in? Can't we? No, that's not plausible. He can't. Oh, he did. Well, what about? I mean, what, of the number of things that struck me, one, my wife was enthralled. She was like not in her stomach, cheering for Rory, crying when he won, and she
my
doesn't.
ambivalent to
She might not
everything
even. She might
14-year-old
watch
daughter
less
watch with
golf.
me.
Yeah, she might watch less golf than you do. I mean,
It's barely possible.
it's she sleeps to golf, I should say. It had that bit to it. It had the early, with Rory making two doubles, or as I call them, mom spaghettis, just throwing up all over himself on day one. He's four deep. He turned around a 4-5 under into an even par round, and you're like,
Yeah, I mean,
really?
this was not a clean back nine by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean,
Three
can you
bogeys
throw
and a
away-
double, right? So
Yeah, four doubles on the week. But can you throw away four strokes on the first day? I mean, the good news is he had 3 days to make up for it, but, I can't remember another tournament where the eventual winner was so close and it looked like absolute tragedy and triumph, like within a matter of minutes. I mean, you have the Jean Van de Veldes, you have these, historical. I mean, Spieth, obviously, number 12 at Augusta has done its thing to many others, but like to bring yourself back, particularly after the wedge shot on 13 in the final round, like not a hard shot other than the circumstances. And I get it. Downhill, ball's a little, he said it was kind of a little bit of an awkward line. He tends to, pull those kind of chips, those pitches a little bit. So he gave himself a little more room to the right maybe than he would have otherwise. And then, by all accounts, one of the worst shots you'll ever see a professional golfer hit.
and that's one of you can understand.
I mean,
You want it to be different for a professional, but that's a shot. All of us have had that lie, and it gets in your head very quickly. Even if you're not playing for anything, right?
Yeah.
You're just out having fun.
Right.
You start to think it, you overthink it, and you kind of think about everything that can potentially go wrong, and you just don't execute. And I don't know that that's necessarily what happened there, but whew.
we can't gloss over the Max Homa. I mean, to me, that's probably the best story that nobody's going to talk about or won't get much coverage. Is like you said, where on the map was Max Homa before this tournament? He was nowhere. I mean, and again, if there's anybody that's been as vulnerable as Rory,
somewhere well south of being in contention at the Masters.
I mean, but making the cut at first, you're like, oh my gosh. Making the cut that's I mean, and then again, you have to go back just a week or whatever, splitting up with his caddy. Really, the caddy's decision. Joe Griner saying, "Hey, this isn't going well." Rarely do you hear the caddy in that type of situation be the one saying, caddy firing the player. So he has obviously different guy on the bag this week. I mean, Max is going through it, trying to find some semblance of a game and nowhere to be found. And now T12 gets him into next year's Masters. So he's already in to next year. Maybe this can help springboard him forward a little bit. But again, no one's been more transparent, I think, with this process and the struggles of what that looks like in professional golf. Well, we know it's razor thin. The margins are all absolutely razor thin. And when you're on the right side of that, that razor blade, it's private jets and popularity, millions of dollars, wealth, fame, all this stuff. And when you're on the wrong side of that razor blade, ooh, you're forgotten pretty quickly. And so to watch Max go through that um, super happy for him. I mean, that's a very, very cool outcome.
If you look too, like going a little deeper on the leaderboard, I mean, Bubba Watson, T14 from a guy again, right? Like he's on the live bubble. You know,
Right.
like you may not your game may not be worthy of the range goats.
Right.
I mean that's where Bubba's at, and now
Yeah.
And again, there's something about Augusta, right? There are guys that just habitually play this course well. Again, going back to Max Homa, T3 last year, I believe. So not shocking, except for everything that has happened in the last few months. You know.
Well, and I think one of the other dynamics. I mean, we could talk about this for hours. All the different elements and things in play. I mean, maybe more than any of the other majors. Certainly the Masters. For a variety of reasons. One, it's a super limited field, right? I mean, you're not talking 144, 156 players. You're talking, 88, 94, 95, 94, 95, whatever before Vijay Singh withdrew this week. Top 50 in ties. It's not the hardest major to make a cut in for sure because you're beating people, again, no disrespect whatsoever, but you have guys like, there's going to be 4, 5, 6 amateurs in there that have never seen the course before. You're going to have players playing on the lifetime exemption. This was Bernhard Langer's last year after 41, 41 goes at it. Gary Player teed it up well past when he should have from a competitive standpoint. Freddie Couple's still competitive, but he'll tell you their goal is to make the cut. So in some ways, you have that element, and then I would also say the Open or British Open, where weather, the draw, these things can play and kind of equal out the field, and you can get a Stuart Sink, Tom Watson type situation coming down the stretch, right? The Masters and the British Open give us more of these types of stories or possibilities, like the Justin Rose. Why couldn't Adam Scott win another one? That kind of stuff. It's that, and then what about Bryson? Am I reading too much into this, or is this still a referendum on PGA Tour versus Live? Again, it was built, Rory, Bryson, final round. Bryson's going to do his YouTube, ballyhoo, fist pumping, getting with the crowd, like engaging, all this stuff. And Rory's going to kind of do his thing. And it kind of seemed like Rory almost out-alphaed Alpha Bryson. Didn't talk to him. Blinders on. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, he did his thing, right? And that's what you got to do. And, I mean, looking like a guy who blew his chance, how long ago was that, right? So
yeah,
you just feel like you can understand why Rory would be very much tunnel vision and not want to be affable. And who knows, right? Maybe there is something in terms of bad blood related to Live and everything that's come of that, but I mean, I wouldn't read too much into it at this point. Like that's kind of what I think he probably felt like he needed to do to win this thing.
Of course. Yeah. I'm not saying I hope there's bad blood. I'm not saying that, but I think rivalries are good for sports and I think it's enjoyable. So like in my mind, one of the first things Bethpage, Ryder Cup, give me Rory Bryson singles on Sunday. With the Ryder Cup in the balance, that could be amazing. And then obviously, as we see with the different, majors here over the next 2 to 3 months, we'll have that as well. So just an awesome, awesome thing. Not that anybody really cares at this point, but Rory's still rocking the QI10 stuff in the Metalwoods. He's not a QI35 convert just yet. So you'll see, TaylorMade probably push more of the golfing ball part of his bag, wedges,
TP5.
Yeah, putter certainly, but he's still in the QI10 situation. We'll see if that changes. Speaking of changes, speaking of TaylorMade, let's stay with TaylorMade, shall we?
Okay.
Do you have props?
Oh, I do have a prop. Hold on, you can. That's right.
Well, what do you have? Hold, please.
Go get that.
Go get your props. I want to see your props, Tony.
Here we go.
What do we got?
This will be, I think probably the next to last mini driver of any significant consequence that will be released in 2025.
Okay.
So here we go. TaylorMade R7 Quad Mini Driver. So there you go. Look at all these views I'm giving you here. Four weights. So true to the original, and I think, big picture, we've seen TaylorMade, once it kind of got through the malaise of the Aero Burner Mini, that you can argue why, or you can kind of understand why they waited quite a while to make another one after that. But since Aero Burner Mini, the Mini platform has become TaylorMade's like nostalgia platform, right?
I know,
like, it gives you the warm fuzzies. So you go back, right? 2019, the original one. It was a tribute to the Pittsburgh Persimmon 300 Mini, tribute to the 300 series, which I think probably, in addition to introducing the idea of fitting by different profiles, right? Different heads within the same family for different golfers. Certainly groundbreaking idea at its time. Now it's a part of every story we tell.
Yeah. But at that time, really, it wasn't. It was
kind of new at that time, and really kind of a revitalization of TaylorMade, and kind of sent them, I think, down the path of being, for a good long run, right? Like the metalwoods company in golf. Yeah. And of course, 23 and 24, we had cosmetic variations on the Burner Mini. And now here we go, like R7 Quad, and this one in particular, when we talk about a nostalgia play, man, this one
Such
resonates. Like, oh my god, good. I mean, the people who have seen this early, our staff, a couple of my friends who've stopped by the house and seen it, it's just like, man, there's something that just instantly resonates. They're like, I'm gonna buy that. I'm gonna buy it the day that it comes out. I'm not even gonna hit it first. I'm just gonna trust that it's gonna be awesome, because I had an R7 Quad and it was awesome. And so, like, we're just getting this Mini and we're rolling with it. So
I love the fact that TaylorMade uses it as a proxy for kind of these nostalgia plays. I think it's a great way to engage, like I said, the people that maybe had that R7 Quad in this case, or remembered the Burner or whatever. I mean, it goes back, all of a sudden you're thinking that I kind of wish it had the TP crest on it.
Right, and I mentioned that in the article, right? Like, out on that toe, it would have been awesome, but to get into the nitpicking portion of our program, you put a TP, there we go, so head cover reversible,
little checkered flag, little racing,
listening on the iTunes or something. But TP back in the day, right, signified largely upgraded shaft. So here we have this is, I'll give you the official story, and then I will just shake my head and roll my eyes. So this is a Fujikura. Hold on, let me put it down so I can air quote the hell out of this. Fujikura Speeder MD for mini driver. So the official story, like, specifically engineered for mini drivers. Not a fan, right? Like,
what does that mean? I don't.
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean? Import laws being what they are, you have to kind of spell out where everything that's made. So this head made in Taiwan, the shaft made in China. Fujikura doesn't really do a lot of their manufacturing, not their premium manufacturing for sure, in China. Right. This is a speeder in name only. This is the same game that TaylorMade plays with the non-velo core Ventus, and is the last company that really leans into this made-for shaft thing. And it just, man, for me, like I said, I love this. This package is awesome. The nostalgia play, it looks great. I'm really looking forward to 305 cc's. It's in the ballpark of playable off the fairway. Like, really excited to get this out on the golf course and compare it to the other minis that we have in here. Also, like, really interesting as this category grows, trying to understand, all right, who does this work for? Can you hit it off the decks? Which are better off the tee? Those type of considerations, and you're all jazzed for this, and you get this Speeder MD shaft. And for me, it's like, you ever had like a really good ribeye, right? You are enjoying every bite of that steak.
Oh, now
and
you're
you get
speaking
to
my
that
language.
last piece, and you're like, man, I hate for this to come to end, but I'm going to really savor this last piece. And you take a bite, and it's just a big chunk of fat, and you're just like, yeah, everything was good, and I'm mostly going to remember this meal fondly, but that last bite, man, that just in the moment ruined it for me.
And it didn't change the price.
No.
That steak was your $75 steak or whatever. It was still $75.
Yeah.
Regardless of how it finished.
So.
Yeah, that's the conundrum. That's the shaft conundrum of the industry. Like I said, I feel like Titleist quite a while moved away from that, and again, there are going to be nuances here because this could be a whole different episode, and probably should be on what is the difference, and does it actually matter, and the whole shaft world of what's real, what isn't, who cares.
Yeah, and so my whole point in all that, right? You can say, well, you know what? It's a good shaft, and it's going to work for a lot of players. And so the argument is it doesn't matter that it's a made for whatever, right? And so my pushback to that argument has always been, if it really doesn't matter, why do you go to the great lengths that you do to play this kind of game with it, right? If it doesn't matter, just kind of say, hey, this is just kind of a TaylorMade shaft that...
Which is like what Ping does. Like you see Ping with their... Ping's a great example, and they're doing some stuff in the shaft space we're going to get into later in this year, foreshadowing. But if you look at Ping Tour shafts that they've worked on largely with US Team Mamiya, they just say, hey, it's Ping Tour. And it maybe has their graphics, it's black or it's silver, or it's designed for a specific player, maybe something similar to what they have aftermarket or whatever, but they're not trying to make it look like anything other than, hey, this is a Ping shaft that we co-engineered with a manufacturer to fit a certain thing.
Yes, our tour is similar to, back of the original Ping tour, it was very similar in performance and bend profile to an Aldo Latour green, right? So
sure, yeah.
But again, no intent to sort of
nobody was going to mistake it. Oh, that looks like. Yeah. It's like, well, that's a Ping Tour shaft.
It's a Ventus Blurple.
Right. It's a Ventus Blurple. Right.
So, but again, I will continue to be frustrated, and I will be, I'll continue to call TaylorMade out for as long as they continue to do this. And it's worth pointing out, several years ago, right? M1 going all the way back, they moved away from doing this, and then in recent years, they've kind of like, we're going to do it, and we're going to look, it's a price.
Somebody's going to mention that once upon a time,
margin. That's all it is. This is not anything really to do with performance, I don't believe. And like I said, man, it just ruined the last bite of what was just a very, very delicious steak in this.
Otherwise phenomenal
7 mini. Yeah, 6 different moving weights around. Pair of 4s. What are the other ones? Pair of 12s, I think, or 13s. 6 different kind of configurations, high, low, left, right, whatever you want to do. It's all in here. So. Yeah, I'm still very excited to get it out on the course and have some fun.
As well you should be. Yeah, and again, we're going to do some mini driver testing. Someone else is thinking this right now, I guarantee it. They go, didn't TaylorMade have like the real speeder 757 in the R in that 510 TP? Yeah, they did. And so there is some precedent at some point to have the actual $300, $350, $250, whatever shaft.
And what TaylorMade, maybe missing isn't the right word, but what TaylorMade isn't doing right now that some of its competitors are. So we've talked Titleist, for example, right? Had premium upcharge or feature upcharge shafts, whatever you want to call it, where you could get a graphite design, not for nothing by any stretch of the imagination, but at a reasonable, e.g. lower than retail price, right? Callaway has started doing it with Artera, which has been, I would assume, great for them to kind of introduce themselves to the golfing world. That's what, 100 upcharge.
It's like $100
about Ping. We talk about Ping, where the Ping tour shafts are equivalent, right? Different. Think of it as a separate shaft brand, but in terms of material profiles, things like that, they are on par
Absolutely
with
in
what
that
you would
class.
expect from an upcharge lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they're modestly priced, where TaylorMade is kind of on an island, and now very likely has the highest upcharge prices in the industry to coincide with what I'm going to say are the least appealing stock offerings in the industry. So
Yeah.
that's the difficult balance for me, but
Yeah.
again, I still love the thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And with good reason. Kind of a over there. Vice Golf, best known for their golfing balls, and a really really good D2C golf ball. If that's the space you're in, definitely Vice has a vibe to it as a brand. When you see the logo, you got the splatter paintballs. You got here's a cool one. Um,
Oh yeah, is that the Galaxy?
yeah, it's
Love it.
such a cool looking golf ball. I want to save it for like my most important round of like mini golf ever. That will be my ball. Like whenever
When
that
you are
round
at putt putt with big money on the line,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Because I don't.
your
Number
ball.
one, I don't want to take the course and lose it, hit in the water or something. When I got big money, that's gonna be there. But they just came out with metalwood, so we're seeing we got drivers going full equipment on this
Well,
stuff.
USGA. Real quickly. I should
Okay,
mention.
yeah. So sorry, USGA.
TaylorMade
Thank you.
Mini is $479.99. May 1
Okay.
retail. Anyway, moving back to Vice. Yeah. So
Okay.
USGA list
Yep.
two drivers. Let me get the exact model number. I should have pulled it up, but they are Wunderkind drivers.
Okay.
Or if
The
you're,
Wunderkind.
if you're
Good
Nate
German
Shelley,
name.
they're Wunderkid drivers. So
Yep. Wunderkind.
So
Jawohl.
yes, these are the
Commandant.
Wunderkind VGD01 and VGD01 Plus drivers. No information above what we see on the USGA list. Very
Yeah.
prominent Vice script on the toe. You can see that from the photos,
Yep.
which could be kind of cool. And I say the underside of the toe, so we don't know what the crown looks like, but
Yep.
presumably they haven't muddied it up too much.
Yep.
No sign of adjustable weighting.
Okay.
Adjustable hosels for sure.
Okay.
And then it's kind of boiled down to, all right, what can we learn from what the USGA calls the marks, right? The things, the visible markings on the club. So
Yep.
there is a Vice alignment mark of some kind. Somewhere on this head, it does say German engineering, to which I roll my eyes.
Good eye roll. I'll give that a 7 out of 10 on
We're
the eye roll.
doing that again. Show me a patent. Show me a patent, and we can talk about German engineering. We'll see. I could be wrong. Maybe there's something distinctively engineered in Germany here, but that was what they claimed with the golf ball, and we could never find any evidence to support that.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. Laser grid. So that
sounds like a
interesting.
face technology kind of thing.
Yeah,
Huh?
on the face, something called laser grid, and then also what the USGA just references as GPS coordinates.
What is it? What do you think? GPS coordinates.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that like a mark? Like you said, this is under the markings. Like
yeah.
Okay.
And that could just be an interpretation of the markings. That's the beauty. Like the USGA is. The purpose of the list is just to kind of show you what is that something has been approved, and that's really about it. And so it's not expected that it's gonna go through any great lengths to kind of explain the technologies to you,
sure.
and things like that. So
What do you expect? Like when you hear Vice driver, assumably this is coming out to retail at some point. What do you expect if you're a consumer? You see this.
Honestly, low expectations. But I would love to be proven wrong, especially if this comes out at a super consumer-friendly price point.
Uh-huh.
But we look at DTC brands and their products, right?
Yeah.
Really, really easy to make a golf ball. You and I could be in the DTC golf ball business by next week. Now,
Right.
there are, as we've talked about at length, there are certain factories that are going to give you a quality ball and
Right.
many others that won't.
We may
And
not get
certainly,
into Foremost or Nassau by next week,
we're
but
not getting into Nassau. And Foremost, I'm sure they're running at capacity, and Vice has been with them for a long time, and they are
right.
reaping the benefits that come with that, namely a high quality, reliable offering. And so, that's, to me, that is long term. Yeah, okay. The something about the branding resonates, the logo, whatever, the Vice name, but the secret sauce is that it's a really good golf ball made at a facility capable of repeatedly making very good golf balls. When you get into, and anybody can make a putter. When you get into irons, you tend to see fewer what I would call high performance designs, right? Like those player's distance, high tech polymers and whatnot, fillings, whatever you want to call them. But you can make irons. When you get into metalwoods as a DTC brand, it's tough. The stuff we've seen at best is very much hit or miss. And so where is Vice going to land?
Yeah.
Is it going to be, all right, the speed might be there, but it's really spinny. Right? Are we going to be, are we going to be more like Kirkland, or are we going to push into something that can compete with Callaway and Titleist and TaylorMade? And for a DTC brand, it's not easy. So I'm not bullish on it, but I would love to be surprised, especially if, so drivers are the going rate for a top 4 brand.
Sure.
600 to 650. Everybody's in that space.
Yeah.
You go step down, if you want to call it that, in terms of price, 550.
Right.
That's kind of the next tier down, and that's where everybody is landing with new product. And so if you can come in at even at 500, like at 500 starts to sound
$300.
Yeah, 3, even
crazy.
4. Then now you're giving guys a reason to look. And we said this before about golf balls, and I'm sure it'll prove true with other pieces of equipment in the bag. If guys love it and they feel like they got a good value, they're not going to look too hard, right? They're not going to look those detailed product comparisons. They're going to say, yeah, I hit it as far as my old Callaway or whatever, or farther, and they're going to be happy. And that's, hey, cool. That's where I think Vice needs to land with this. Whether or not they can, we'll see.
Yeah, generalities, and again, there are going to be exceptions to this. I think sub 70 is a really good brand to look at in terms of some of these dynamics that we see in the DTC club space, where over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen some metalwoods from sub 70 test really well. Like I said, it's going to be hit and miss. It's going to be tougher, and it might be a hybrid here. It might be a fairway wood there. Drivers are going to be even tougher. More often, you see a single piece, player style iron, maybe a wedge with a very generic grind that's designed to fit the needs of most golfers, and therefore, when it goes through these processes, it tends to test pretty well for most golfers. So we see that kind of stuff. I think the driver, in particular, is one space where what's going in the favor of DTC is that we have these rules and limits that people have been bumping up against for a long time. So you can get closer with certain elements of the production, right? What works primarily against DTC is the fact that they're probably not going to pay for super high spec tolerances. We see this. So even if they manufacture to like a CT of, I don't know, let's say the target's 245, they might get 212 all the way to.
Yeah, and that's right. You're going to have to be looking pretty hard to find that.
Right.
It's no less real, right? The quality difference in terms of, we talk about year over year. We've mentioned this. It's, you're not always, sometimes you're getting speed through a face technology or exploiting that gap between CT and COR that we've talked about before. But a lot of times you're getting it through better manufacturing tolerances. If your range was here,
right,
and you're able to get it here, then you can shift it, right? You can go, all right, I can reliably make these within a narrower range. So now I can bump that the totality of that range to a higher CT target. And you can only do that when you narrow gaps. If you're still spread wide, right?
Yeah.
As you said, right? If your range is 220 to all the way up to 270, well beyond the limit or whatever, you gotta.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't. I mean, we go from a shotgun distribution to a sniper. Those larger companies, TaylorMade, Callaway, Titleist, etc., they can be a little bit more targeted. So again, it has to, for Vice, has to come in at a lower price point for sure. Be interested to see where it gets in because then they're going to be competing against your sub 70s, maybe Tour Edge, some of these other metalwood brands that are in that reduced pricing kind of space. But it also gets me thinking a little bit about just pricing in general, and we may not finish this conversation today because there's a million different ways for it to go, but you have drivers that are $600, $650. That's kind of where we are. I feel like I've had a lot of people lately complaining. People like to complain on social media. There's nothing new there, but like, what's the end game? Why are people? They're just going to keep raising prices on us, and now we have these tariffs to consider, and we have these things, and why does a driver cost $100? Why does it cost $600? We're getting ripped off. Am I getting ripped off at $650 for a driver, Tony? Am I like, should I be calling my congressman and being like, hey, these are like unfair pricing practices? I mean,
good luck with that. Right? Like that's if you feel like a driver is too expensive, if you feel $600, $640, $650,
right,
that's untenable. This is capitalism at work. Right? That's the rule, right? We don't like price fixing. We don't want the government getting involved and saying to Titleist and to TaylorMade and Callaway, that's it.
$442. That's what you can charge this year.
You cannot charge any more than $500 for a driver by law. That's your limit. Nobody wants that. I don't think. Right? That's everything that people campaign against.
Right.
And so failing that, the government shouldn't and isn't going to lock in the price of a driver. So your vote is with your wallet, your credit card. If $650 is too much for you, don't buy a $650 driver. And that's kind of where I land on it. And I think, we've seen lots of comments about, one, how much it actually costs to make a driver, and we can dig into that in a minute if we've got time.
Yeah, I want to.
But this idea of that golf equipment companies have accelerated prices faster than other industries, and I went back and checked it. It's just not true.
No.
On percentage, home prices, for example, up higher.
Right.
I looked at automobiles, higher on percentage than golf equipment. You forget, I think a lot of people forget that we had a good run. When I started this 15 to 10 years ago, that range where prices, they didn't go up. They were stagnant.
Yeah.
Drivers, where we talked about this earlier today, they were 300 or they were 400. And that was it.
$299, $399.
And they were that way for a good long run. So, I think we all understand everything gets expensive, and some people want to blame Titleist, and I would tell you, like, Titleist has probably accelerated more than some. Ping has been, we've talked to some who, several years ago when they jumped in, they crossed a price barrier, and that put a lot of people in kind of shocked at the time and go, hey, can you really charge this much for a driver? And it turns out you can. And if you want to say, well, it's a Titleist problem and it's a Ping problem, I'm going to tell you the two things that those companies have in common is, one, that they're both part of the big four. Right. And among the four, those are the two that assemble their product in the United States. And there can be, it goes out with saying, like, there are additional costs associated with that. It is certainly cheaper to assemble a product in China, in Vietnam, than it is in the U.S.
In Mexico.
Right. So that's part of the equation. Is it all of it? Probably not. And some of it is, let's increase our profit margins. That's capitalism.
Well, roughly, how do you get? I mean, let's break down that cost a little bit before we get into other stuff, because I think the There's a lot of ways to go about cost because you have the percentage part, but you also have the nominal parts. So you say, hey, going from a driver that's say $400 to $600, you go, ooh, okay, well that's a 50% increase on 50%. Okay, 50% versus $200. Man, yeah. Be happy your golf equipment isn't your automobile, isn't your housing, isn't your eggs.
Yeah, and and we can dig into this, but when you look at when brands increase prices, sometimes it's just follow the leader, right? Somebody has to go first, and when somebody goes first, it opens the door to everybody else. That's an unfortunate reality. But there are also things like when you have a technological breakthrough, and I'm not saying that leads to massive performance gains, but when you do something that you can point to that squeezes out more performance and that's different than what you've done, there's very often a cost associated with that because it has increased the cost for the manufacturer. So Titleist, right? ATI faces when TSI came out, and then that bumped prices, I believe, and you can look at with GT, the PMP crowns certainly added to the cost. No way around that. TaylorMade carbon faces adds to cost. Callaway, there you could say the 360 carbon tube
chassis, right?
Yes, increased prices, and so that increases your per head cost, your landing cost, if you will, what it costs to make it, labor, package it, get it over here, all of that, and that is not one-to-one. So if, for example, it costs Titleist $10 more to make a driver because of a technology change, that markup by the time it gets to retail, depending on what that needs to be for the company. So, for bargain brands, maybe it's a 3x. When you get upwards into premium brands, you're probably looking at 4x. And so even if we use that 3x number, if it costs $10 more to make, it's going to cost $30 more at retail. And so those things add up.
Yeah,
again, you don't have to love it. It's just how it is. Again, capitalism, right? And the other thing people say, well, it costs. We had a comment on my tariff article. It costs these guys $50 to make a head. I'm like, no, it doesn't. You can't. Cannot make a head. I've done some digging. I've talked to people, and nobody wants to tell you exactly how much it costs to make a head.
Pay.
And just for the head, I think in China anyway. I think $130 is maybe a good kind of middle point. That number can go up depending on.
You're not too far off one way or the other at 130.
Right, movable weights, all of that adds to cost. So you're looking at a minimum, I think, 130-ish, and that's where it starts. And obviously that's just for a head, and you've got to put an adapter on the shaft that you have to buy, and that shaft has to have a grip. And again, all of those things cost money, and all of those things in terms of what it means at retail. There's a multiplier attached to that, and then obviously there's some rounding, right? Nobody comes in and says, our new driver is going to be 618.94 because that's where our math landed us. You look at that and go 618. Are we going to sell that for 600, or are we going to sell it for 649, 639? Now, some nice round number, and you can bet. Let's go with the higher number. So,
but it's not hard when I do that math just quickly. Again, carbon can be more expensive. The designs, the technologies can be more expensive. Materials, the more movable weights you have, each of those can add cost. And again, we're talking 75 cents here, $1.50 there, $3 there, whatever the case is. But you got 130, 150. Now add a shaft, add a grip, add assembly, because you got to pay somebody to put it.
That's the other piece that just drives me wild. They're like, well, it costs Titleist 100. Let's just say, right? Pick a brand. It costs Vice
Mainline
Golf.
Brand.
It costs Vice Golf. Actually, let's use a bigger one. I'd say it costs some company $140 to make a head, right? 140, and people are like, well, then, some people seem to think they should sell it for $140.
Right.
Because that's what it costs to make it. Or
even if they sell for $200, they're making $60.
Right. Take their 30% markup or what it is, overlooking the fact that retail has to get a cut. And again, this is the key thing is that's the landing cost. That's what it costs to make the product once everything else is done. Driver designs don't just fall out of the sky and come off an assembly line, right? You need R&D teams to develop those products. You need innovation teams, the forward-looking guys, investigating materials, processes at the factory, right? These
Test,
new things, molds. Mold
Right.
costs are, again, like it blows my mind what a mold costs, right? Just a single mold. And obviously you're not rolling out, an entire product cycle's worth of driver with a single mold, right? And all of these things contribute to the cost. And marketing is part of that. Tour spend is part of that. So is the HR department. So is the legal team that likes to send letters to other people's legal teams and play letter ping pong so that everybody justifies their existence. And so it's all encompassing. So to sit here and go, well, if it only costs $130 to make, they should sell it for $150 and be happy.
They're losing their shorts. Because just do that quick math again. You're 140. Okay, let's add an adapter. Just the landing, a dollar or two for a grip or something. You got to add the head cover in there. This is part of the reason they stopped shipping with some of the adjustable tools and stuff too, because that's another cost.
Callaway will sell you a wrench for $5 if you want one.
Right.
No longer included. And they're not. They're probably not making a ton on that. Right? By the time
you have the shaft in there as well, so you're 150, 160. Okay. And then they pay somebody a certain amount per hour to put it together. Go to the other side really quick. If I'm a retailer and I sell it for $600, my cost on that, like I said, let's say it's 30 points. Again, we're using general numbers here because every
retailer's going to
be a little different.
30 to 40%, depending.
Yeah, but let's say it's even on the low end, it's 30%. So, okay, that's $180 from this driver that was $600. So now you're down to $420. Right? So between that 160, 170 to 400-ish number, like I said, you still have to pay for profits out of that. You have to pay for assembly. You have to pay, again, to whatever part you're offsetting the costs of production, R&D, etc. Again, I get it. And we want companies to make money because someone's going to say, oh, well, that's, they're making X amount. Well, nobody's working for free. So they have to pay their employees. You get from that 160, 170 in raw costs to $400 pretty quickly. So the fact that they're $600, $650, I don't think is exorbitant at all.
No, I mean, you can nitpick, and I would say when you look at, and you kind of understand why it is, right? But if a company knows, look, I'm gonna do 20% of the drivers that I sell in a given season, I'm gonna sell direct to consumer.
Right.
Nobody's getting a price break on that.
Right.
Okay, they're not going, well, you know what? Because we're not paying retailer, we're gonna sell DTC at 20% less. We're still
they're selling still for $600. They're just not paying that last $180.
This is the challenge. We've talked about this with when it comes to things like offering discounts and things like that, where it's just not allowed in golf until you get to end of season clearance pricing. You can't undercut retail, right? You can't have something that sells at Dick's Sporting Goods for $600 and sell it for $550 or some lower price on the website because you're not giving away as much margin. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, it would be nice if it did, but that's a hell of a recipe to make sure your product gets dropped by Dick's Sporting Goods and PGA Superstore and anywhere else where the bulk of your product is actually sold. So there's some wiggle room, and I'm sure, right? Margins are. We talked about balance sheets. Barbara writes articles. Callaway's publicly traded. Kushnet puts out their financials. We know, like, these guys are making plenty of money, and so you can argue, like, hey, how much is enough? But the other thing to keep in mind, right? This is not guaranteed future income. Like, if you made $1 billion last year, it's no guarantee that you're going to make $1 billion next year, especially if the economy sinks a little bit. You can expect to sell less, and so it's like, hey, you squirrel away what you can, knowing that maybe next year you don't make quite as much, and you're going to catch hell from investors for it. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't.
The whole cost of goods and costs of different pieces is something we'll have to continue to talk about, because I think irons, wedges, these things. Where does it go? How does it change consumer behavior? Is something that's particularly interesting to me. Should costs increase in any kind of meaningful fashion? Like, how does that actually impact who buys what and how much. We know that right now today, there is a core group of golfers, call it 6 to 7 million, roughly 25% of golfers out there that account for the majority, 80 to 90% of total spending. And so the golf companies, they want to make sure that 25% that they're pretty price inelastic, right? Like they can increase it $10, $20, $30 if they have to and still maintain that huge chunk of people or that small chunk of people that spend the majority of the money. But like you said, that's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed for 2026 or the rest of 2025. I don't know. It's all happening, Tony. There's more out there. It could get weird. It could get wild. At least we can all be happy that Rory,
hell yeah,
Grand Slam. Last, let's finish up with this. What's your best idea for TaylorMade to celebrate this Grand Slam accomplishment for Rory? They got to do something, right?
Yeah.
They got to do something. How do they not pair up with Denny's and do some amazing Grand Slam breakfast regalia?
I think you do something really cool around whatever that was. I don't have it in front of me. You may know. That shot that Rory hit on 15.
Which day?
Sunday.
He hit 7-iron.
So let's do something, because that to me was the shot, right? If you're looking for what is the defining shot of the tournament, and like he made birdie on the hole, narrowly missed an eagle, right? So yeah, that was the one for me. So I would do something around that.
As long as they include the Grand Slam breakfast from Denny's, I'm in. I think they just got to include that, then I'm good.
A commemorative club and a free breakfast coupon.
A free breakfast coupon. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe people out there have better ideas than we do. I
can't imagine they'd have worse.
We'll see. Who knows what happens? Let us know what you think. Until next time, people, we out.